Looks like the clown show continues to go on in the Indiana Fever organization led by Amber Cox, clown show, Kelly Krauskopf, clown show, and the bozo of all bozos, head coach Stephanie White, who's just, all of them, they are just sabotaging Caitlin Clark's career. It looks like GM Andrew Cox fires off on Caitlin Clark fans on social media and starts blocking them as well. This is an immature, nasty organization. Caitlin Clark and her agent Aaron Kane need to demand a trade immediately. Welcome to Keep the Vision. Make sure you like, comment, subscribe, share the channel.
What happens when the most electrifying player to enter women's basketball in a generation lands in an organization that appears completely unprepared, or worse, unwilling, to build around her? That is the question consuming the basketball world right now, and the answers coming out of Indianapolis are painting a deeply troubling picture. Caitlin Clark did not just enter the WNBA, she transformed it. She brought television ratings that shattered records, sold out arenas that had been half empty for years, and introduced millions of brand new fans to a league that desperately needed exactly that kind of momentum. She was, by every measurable standard, the most important thing to happen to the WNBA in its nearly three-decade history. And yet somehow, the Indiana Fever appear to be fumbling what should have been the easiest opportunity in professional sports history. What is happening inside that organization? Why does every decision coming out of the front office and coaching staff seem to work against their own
organization? Caitlin Clark and her agent Aaron Kane need to demand a trade immediately. Welcome to Keep the Vision. Make sure you like, comment, subscribe, share the channel, hit that bell notification, and hype the video. That'd be greatly appreciated. Let's get right into things. So we all watched the travesty that took place last night, and Stephanie White trying to crash out on Caitlin Clark, Raven Johnson fouling out in 9 minutes. I mean, it just was a complete joke by Stephanie White. I think she exposed herself. I think she exposed the fact that she's not a good coach at all, and she needs to be fired. And if you don't want to fire her, Caitlin
superstar. Why is the general manager blocking fans and journalists on social media instead of addressing legitimate concerns? Why is the head coach running rotations that leave analysts completely speechless? And why does it feel less like incompetence and more like something far more deliberate is going on? Tonight, we are pulling back the curtain on everything. The coaching disasters, the front office failures, the social media meltdowns, the allegations of sabotage, and what Caitlin Clark and her team may need to seriously consider doing next. Buckle up, because this story is bigger than basketball. Let us start with what happened on the court, because that is where the frustration first took root, and where the questions about coaching competence became impossible to ignore. In a recent game that quickly became a flashpoint for growing tensions, head coach Stephanie White made a decision that left everyone watching absolutely stunned. In the first quarter alone, in just 10 minutes of basketball, she rotated 11 different players.
And then he also had this today. He had a bunch of things to say. So we got Amber Cox blocking Caitlin Clark fans, right? Because she can't handle the heat, so she need to get her ass up out the kitchen and get up out of here. Get your ass up out the kitchen and get up out of here. She can't handle the heat and the pressure that's coming with this, and she's bewilting under the pressure. Okay, Jason Whitlock has had this to say. Check this out. Here it says, these four women put the alphabet mafia agenda above basketball business. Your personal life should be your personal life. It should not be your business agenda. Okay, and
players through the lineup. 11 in 10 minutes. That is not a coaching strategy. That is not even experimentation. That is chaos dressed up as decision-making, and it had real consequences on the floor. When you rotate 11 players through a lineup in the opening quarter of a professional basketball game, you are doing one thing with near certainty. You are destroying any chance your starters have of finding a rhythm. Chemistry between players on the court is not something that magically appears. It is built through repetition, through shared minutes, through learning each other's tendencies and timing. You cannot build any of that when players are rotating in and out of the game every 60 seconds.
Agenda above basketball business. Your personal life should be your personal life. It should not be your business agenda. Okay. And these are the four who are responsible for the sabotage of Caitlin Clark. And you too, Lynn Dunn is a part of the sabotage of Caitlin Clark. Obviously, Bozo the Clown, Stephanie White is a part of the sabotage of Stephanie White's a part of the sabotage of Caitlin Clark. GM Amber Cox. I don't do no scouting. I can't put a roster together to save my life. Amber Cox is a part of the sabotage. And president of basketball operations.
Now context matters here. Portland was playing its third game in 4 nights during this stretch, which means they were the more fatigued team. That should have been an advantage for Indiana. Instead of exploiting that advantage by riding their best players and building momentum, White chose to spread the minutes so thin that no unit on the floor ever had a real opportunity to get going. It defied logic then, and it continues to defy logic now. But the rotation chaos was not even the most talked about decision of the night. The moment that truly sent the fan base over the edge was when Stephanie White chose to sub Ty Harris back into the game before reinserting Caitlin Clark. Read that again. The head coach of the Indiana Fever put a role player back on the floor.
Like they were playing 3 games in 4 nights. It was actually Portland playing its third game in 4 nights. Steph played 11 players in the first quarter. Wrong coach. 11 players in the first quarter is an atrocity. It is a fireable offense. It is a fireable offense. You got Amber Cox blocking Jason Whitlock because he's being honest and keeping it real about what is going on with the Indiana Fever. They played 11 damn players in the first quarter. They put Ty Harris into the game before they subbed Caitlin Clark back in.
Before she put in her franchise player. The player who is responsible for the sold-out arenas. The player who drives the television ratings. The player who is, without any serious debate, the most important athlete in the WNBA right now. She sat on the bench while Ty Harris played. There is no tactical explanation for that decision that holds up to scrutiny. You can try to construct one, but it falls apart immediately when you consider the stakes, the moment, and the talent differential between the 2 players. Critics and analysts have pointed to this as one of the clearest examples yet of a coaching staff.
The fix isn't in. Y'all don't believe the fix is in? Come on, man. A blind man could see this. This organization is a joke and a clown show. He also had this to say: if the Indiana Fever are run like a business, the decision to build around Caitlin Clark is easy. If the Indiana Fever are part of the WNBA's LGBTQ's agenda, then decisions are complicated and Caitlin Clark will be sacrificed. And it seems to be clear as day. It seems to be clear as day what they have decided.
That either does not understand how to manage a superstar, or more disturbingly, does not want to. And then there is the defensive scheme, which has become its own separate disaster. White has her team switching 1 through 5 on defense, meaning every player on the floor is expected to guard any opposing player regardless of size or position. In theory, switching defenses can be effective. In practice, with this particular roster, it is creating nightmare mismatches on a nightly basis. What that looks like in real time is Caitlin Clark, a 5'9" guard, being asked to defend a center in the paint. It is a mismatch so obvious that television commentators have felt the need to explain.
He also had this to say: if the Indiana Fever are run like a business, the decision to build around Caitlin Clark is easy. If the Indiana Fever are part of the WNBA's LGBTQ's agenda, then decisions are complicated and Caitlin Clark will be sacrificed. And it seems to be clear as day. It seems to be clear as day what they have decided. It seems to be clear as day what they've decided. This organization is not doing right by Caitlin Clark. This organization is a circus. This organization.
Explain it to viewers during live broadcasts. When the announcers calling the game have to pause and essentially say, yes, you are seeing what you think you are seeing, and no, it does not make sense. That is a massive red flag about the coaching philosophy driving these decisions. Indiana switches more than any other team in the entire league. That statistic would be impressive if it were producing results. It is not. It is producing defensive breakdowns, easy baskets for opponents, and a level of frustration from the fan base that is reaching a boiling point. And when the same Portland team that Indiana celebrated beating came back in a subsequent game and handed the Fever a humiliating blow.
Sports, you've done a disservice to the WNBA, and that's why Amber and Kelly has to leave also. See, y'all got this little weird relationship because y'all was all part of the organization years ago and whatnot. So y'all feel like y'all can do no wrong. Y'all are literally destroying the reason why people wanted to watch this motherfucker in the first place after 30 years.
Exactly. This
is crazy. You are a fucking horrible coach.
Typical.
That is, shout out to Angry Fan Sports. Y'all go over there and subscribe. They are destroying the very thing that got everybody paid, that got
out. It confirmed what many had already suspected, that the previous win was a fluke built on smoke and mirrors rather than any real tactical foundation. Stephanie White is being exposed, not gradually and not quietly. She's being exposed loudly on national broadcasts, across social media, and through the scoreboard game after game. If the coaching situation is troubling, the behavior coming from the front office has been nothing short of astonishing. Amber Cox, serving as general manager of the Indiana Fever, has found herself at the center of a firestorm of her own making. Rather than addressing the legitimate and growing concerns of the fan base, the people who purchase tickets, buy merchandise, and watch every game, Cox reportedly went on social media and began firing off defensive posts that struck many observers as panicked and deeply unprofessional. The specific trigger appeared to be the handling of Caitlin Clark's late scratch from a recent game. The way that situation was communicated, or rather, not properly communicated, to the public raised serious questions about transparency and organizational competence. Fans noticed. Journalists noticed. Critics began pointing out that the process felt sloppy and disrespectful to both the player and the people who had shown up or tuned in specifically to watch her play. Instead of acknowledging those concerns, instead of taking the opportunity to be transparent with a fan base that was genuinely invested and genuinely worried, Cox reportedly went on the offensive. She took shots at fans online. She posted defensively. And then she started blocking people, not just random commenters, but high-profile voices including prominent sports media personalities. One of the most notable names to reportedly get blocked was Jason Whitlock, a well-known sports commentator who had been vocal about his concerns regarding the direction of the Indiana Fever organization. Whether you agree with Whitlock's specific framing or not, the fact that a general manager of a professional sports franchise felt the need to block a sports journalist for asking questions and raising concerns tells you everything you need to know about the current state of this organization's leadership. Blocking critics is not a strategy. It is a symptom. It is what people do when they have no real defense for their decisions and cannot withstand the pressure of public scrutiny. A confident executive who believed in the direction of her organization would engage with the criticism, address it factually, and let the results speak for themselves. What Cox did instead was retreat behind a block button and throw fuel onto a fire that she absolutely did not need to make bigger. The irony that seems entirely lost on Cox and the broader Fever leadership is this: Caitlin Clark is the reason anyone is paying this much attention. The scrutiny that feels overwhelming to them right now exists because Clark brought millions of new eyes to this franchise. Before Clark, the Indiana Fever were not generating this level of national conversation. The same media attention that is now shining an uncomfortable light on their organizational failures is the direct result of the cultural phenomenon they have been trusted to manage and grow. And instead of being grateful for that, instead of rising to meet the moment, the general manager is on social media blocking fans and posting defensive screeds. It is, as many have described it, the behavior of a high school drama department, not a professional sports front office. Beyond the coaching and the social media chaos, there is a deeper and more consequential question being asked about the Indiana Fever. Did they ever actually have a plan to build around Caitlin Clark? Building around a player of Clark's caliber should not be complicated. She is a generational shooter who can create her own offense and elevate the players around her. What she needs is spacing, shooters who can spread the floor and give her room to operate, and athletic defenders who can compensate for the defensive mismatches that will inevitably occur when your point guard is the primary offensive focal point. What the Fever have assembled instead has left scouts and analysts genuinely puzzled. The roster decisions across multiple off-seasons have produced a collection of players that does not appear to have been designed with Clark's specific skill set and needs in mind. Money has reportedly been spent on veterans who have not moved the needle, and opportunities to add the right complementary pieces have seemingly been missed. When your best player is a 5'9" playmaking guard who generates more individual attention than anyone else in the league, your roster construction has to account for that reality. Every decision, every signing, every draft pick, every trade has to be filtered through the question of how it helps that player succeed. There is no evidence that has been the operating philosophy in Indianapolis, and the results on the court reflect that disconnect. Compare this to how other organizations have handled their marquee talents. The Las Vegas Aces built a complete team around Aja Wilson with shooters, defenders, and a coaching staff specifically designed to maximize her abilities. The Connecticut Sun have invested thoughtfully in building a supporting cast around Paige Buchers. You do not see those players being pulled from games 4 minutes into the first quarter for inexplicable reasons. You do not see their coaches running 11-player rotations in the opening period. Those organizations understand the fundamental principle that you identify your best player, build around her, and ride her to the finish line. The Fever appear to either not understand that principle or to be operating under a different set of priorities entirely. This brings us to the most serious and most controversial aspect of this entire conversation. The growing chorus of voices alleging that what is happening in Indiana is not simply incompetence, but deliberate sabotage. The sabotage narrative has been amplified by commentators like Jason Whitlock, who has gone on record suggesting that certain members of the Fever's leadership are prioritizing personal agendas over basketball decisions, and that Clark is effectively being sacrificed as a result. Whitlock and others have pointed to what they describe as an organizational culture in which political and personal considerations have taken precedence over the straightforward business logic of building a winning team around a generational talent. These are serious allegations, and it is important to be clear about what we know versus what is being speculated. What we know is that the coaching decisions have been consistently questionable. We know that the roster construction has not clearly prioritized Clark's success. We know that the general manager responded to public criticism not with transparency and accountability, but with social media blocks and defensive posts. We know that Raven Johnson fouled out in 9 minutes during a recent game, rendering a key player useless through poor decision-making on the floor. We know that these patterns are not isolated incidents, they are recurring. What we cannot say with certainty is whether these failures are the result of deliberate intent or extraordinary incompetence. Both explanations are troubling in their own ways. Deliberate sabotage would represent a profound betrayal of a player and a fan base. Extraordinary incompetence at this level, in this moment, with this much on the line, would represent a failure of organizational leadership so severe that the outcome is effectively the same. What we can say is this: the pattern of decisions coming out of Indiana consistently produces outcomes that hurt Caitlin Clark's ability to perform at her best. Whether that pattern is intentional or accidental, it needs to stop. And if the people currently in charge are not willing or able to change it, then the people in charge need to change. Critics have identified 4 individuals as the core of what they describe as a dysfunctional leadership structure: Lynn Dunn, Stephanie White, Amber Cox, and Kelly Crosskopf. The allegation is not simply that these individuals are making bad decisions, but that their shared history and personal relationships with one another have created an insular environment where nobody is ever held accountable for failures because everyone is protecting everyone else. This dynamic, sometimes called a circle of protection, is one of the most toxic things that can exist within a professional organization. When leadership becomes more focused on protecting relationships than on producing results, accountability disappears. Bad decisions go unchallenged because challenging them would mean challenging a friend. Failures get explained away rather than honestly examined. And the people outside that circle, including the players, the staff below, and ultimately the fans, pay the price. If the allegations about this leadership group are accurate, it would explain a great deal about why obvious problems continue to persist without correction. It would explain why a coaching strategy that is producing consistent defensive disasters has not been adjusted. It would explain why roster construction that clearly does not serve the team's best player has not been revisited. And it would explain why the organization's response to public criticism has been defensiveness and blocking rather than honest self-reflection. So where does this go from here? What are the realistic options? And what needs to happen for this situation to change? The first and most immediate thing that needs to happen is accountability at the coaching level. Stephanie White's rotations, her defensive schemes, and her decision-making around Clark specifically need to be examined honestly and openly. If she is unwilling or unable to adjust, the conversation about her future with the organization needs to happen quickly. The season is not going to wait for a coaching staff to find itself. Second, the front office needs to demonstrate a genuine commitment to building around Clark through concrete actions, not press releases. That means roster moves that make logical sense when viewed through the lens of what Clark needs to succeed. It means acquisitions that add shooting and defensive athleticism, not veterans who are past their prime and do not fit the system. Third, Amber Cox needs to understand that her job is to serve the organization and the fan base, not to protect herself from criticism on social media. The blocking, the defensive posts, the apparent bitterness toward media coverage of Clark, all of it needs to stop. Immediately. It is unprofessional, it is counterproductive, and it is making an already difficult situation dramatically worse. And finally, if none of the above happens, if the coaching remains chaotic, if the roster decisions remain baffling, if the front office continues to treat the fan base like the enemy, then Caitlin Clark and her representation need to have a very serious conversation about her future in Indianapolis. A trade demand, once unthinkable given how early we are in her career, is becoming a conversation that more and more people in and around the league are beginning to consider legitimate and justified. Clark deserves to be somewhere that respects what she brings, that builds intelligently around her talents, and that treats the fans who show up to watch her with basic dignity and transparency. Whether that place is Indianapolis or somewhere else is ultimately a question for the organization to answer through its actions. The Indiana Fever are at a crossroads, and the decision they make in the coming weeks will define this franchise for years to come. On one side of that crossroads is the path of accountability and honest rebuilding, where the coaches adjust, the front office makes smart decisions, and the leadership stops treating criticism like an attack and starts treating it like information. That path is hard. It requires humility. It requires admitting that mistakes have been made and that changes are necessary, but it leads somewhere worth going. On the other side is the path they appear to be currently walking, where rotations remain inexplicable, where the GM blocks journalists, where the same leadership group circles the wagons and protects each other while the product on the court deteriorates around them. That path is easy in the short term and catastrophic in the long term. Caitlin Clark is not just a basketball player. She's a once-in-a-generation phenomenon who gave the Indiana Fever and the WNBA at large something that money cannot buy: relevance, excitement, and a massive, passionate audience that was hungry for exactly what she delivers. You do not waste that. You do not take that for granted. And you absolutely do not respond to the people pointing out that you might be wasting it by blocking them on social media. The world is watching Indiana right now. Every decision, every rotation, every post, every block, it is all being seen and documented and discussed. The question is not whether the Fever organization will be judged by history on how they handle this moment. They absolutely will be. The question is what that judgment will say. Right now, it is not looking good, but there is still time to change the story. The clock, however, is ticking, and Caitlin Clark's patience, like that of the fans who showed up for her, is not infinite. Comment below. Should Caitlin Clark demand a trade from the Indiana Fever? Subscribe and hit the bell notification so you never miss breaking Caitlin Clark and WNBA news. Like this video if you think Caitlin Clark deserves better.